Hello, I'm James Azimoha and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Trump actions blockade in Strait of Hormuz and says Iran wants a deal very badly. Lebanon enters talks with Israel in Washington, but Hezbollah says it's pointless. And Pope Leo begins his Africa tour in Algeria as he calls for peace in the Middle East. The U.S. blockade of Iranian ports is now in effect after U.S. President Donald Trump made the announcement following failed talks in Islamabad on Saturday. However, Western allies have refused to join in on the plan. Meantime, maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has now come to a halt, with experts saying this could negatively impact international markets.
Tensions are rapidly escalating in the Middle East as Donald Trump orders a sweeping U.S. naval blockade targeting Iranian ports. Trump warned that any Iranian vessels approaching U.S. forces in the Strait of Hormuz would be immediately eliminated, signaling a major escalation in military posture. According to United States Central Command, the blockade began Monday, restricting all maritime traffic to and from Iranian ports, while allowing passage for ships not linked to Iran. Iran has responded with strong warnings. Officials say their armed forces are on maximum alert, vowing a decisive response to any aggression. Tehran has also accused Washington of piracy as protests erupted in the capital. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu expressed support for the U.S. move, saying Israel is closely coordinating with Washington and warning a fragile ceasefire could soon collapse. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said the path forward depends on Iran, urging Tehran to abandon nuclear ambitions and reopen the strait fully to global trade.
Is that we need to see the Straits of Hormuz fully open. And this is frankly one of the things where the Iranians tried to move the goalposts during the negotiation. We made very clear that that's unacceptable. We came to the negotiation saying the United States, what we've given here is a ceasefire. We've stopped bombing the country. What we expect the Iranians to give up is a full reopening of the Straits of Hormuz. We have seen, as the president has said, some significant uptick in traffic coming through the Straits of Hormuz. That's good for the global economy.
Despite rising tensions, NATO allies, including Britain and France, have declined to participate in the blockade, instead pushing for diplomatic efforts to reopen the critical shipping route, which carries roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply. As both sides dig in, concerns are mounting over the risk of wider conflict and its impact on global energy markets.
Global concern is growing over disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. Maritime officials and world leaders are calling for calm and warning against blocking vital trade routes. Here's more.
Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, Arsenio Dominguez, said on Monday that no country has the right to blockade international straits used for international transit.
Because of the conflict, it is not safe for the ships to transit through these corridors, and this is what is actually stopping this. But legally speaking, in accordance to international law, no countries have the right to prohibit the right of innocent passage or the freedom of navigation through international straits that are used for international transit.
Dominguez also told reporters the IMO, as a rulemaker and coordinator, has been working with member states and United Nations agencies to prevent escalation. Meanwhile, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for continued dialogue, highlighting the global importance of the Strait of Hormuz. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric delivered his messages on Monday.
The Secretary General stresses that all parties to this conflict must respect freedom of navigation, including in the Strait of Hormuz, in line with international law. Disruptions in the maritime trade through the Strait of Hormuz have already had a direct impact well beyond the immediate region, with increased global economic fragility and insecurity in many sectors.
Global energy markets are also under pressure. The International Energy Agency has urged countries not to hoard supplies or impose export controls, warning this could worsen what it describes as the biggest shock ever to the global energy market.
So we have released 400 million barrels of oil, which is the largest in the history. And it is hitting the markets. I am very happy with that. We have seen that the prices went down by almost $20. It is good, but this is not the solution. This is only reducing the pain. The solution goes through opening up the Strait of Hormuz fully to the trade.
The United States' NATO allies, including Britain and France, say they will not take part in any blockade. Instead, they are calling for the waterway to be reopened. French President Emmanuel Macron said France will organise a conference with Britain and other countries to create a multinational mission to restore navigation in the strait.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to join direct talks between Israel and Lebanon in Washington on Tuesday. The meeting at the State Department will bring together the Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors, marking the start of direct negotiations between both sides. Officials say the talks will focus on securing a ceasefire and a broader political settlement. The discussions come amid ongoing fighting in southern Lebanon, where Israel has expanded its air and ground operations.
Well, we think ultimately in the 21st century.
Residents in Beirut are voicing deep skepticism about the chances for progress as Israel and Lebanon hold rare talks in Washington.
In Beirut, daily life continues under the strain of conflict, from the seafront to the streets of Hamra. But for many, the prospect of talks with Israel is being met with doubt. Some say negotiations alone won't be enough to shift the balance.
The best thing is to wait and see what will happen on the ground in the battles, because without military pressure, Israel will not back down or make concessions to Lebanon. God willing, the military pressure will yield results so that we can pressure Israel to grant Lebanon its rights, return its lands and prisoners, and bring peace to the south.
Others are more blunt, rejecting the talks altogether as tensions inside Lebanon deepen.
Negotiations between Lebanon and Israel are a strategic mistake, which the Lebanese people will pay the price for. I don't know why the rush. What are they even negotiating about? One negotiates when you have a Lebanese delegation that includes all Lebanese, with the approval of the entire Lebanese people. Let them do a referendum. Do the Lebanese people accept the negotiations? Of course not.
The meeting in Washington, a rare face-to-face between two sides still technically at war, comes with expectations already low, as divisions at home and hard lines on both sides cast uncertainty over any breakthrough.
European Council President Antonio Costa has arrived in Abu Dhabi as part of a two-day tour of Persian Gulf countries. In a social media post, Costa said the visit aims to send a message of solidarity to Gulf states in the face of what he described as unjustifiable and unlawful attacks by Iran. Following talks with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Costa said the EU is committed to working with regional partners to restore freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Berlin on Tuesday for high-level German-Ukraine government meetings. During the visit, The two sides viewed a showcase of Ukrainian-made drones, with talks focusing on strengthening cooperation in drone capabilities and digital battlefield systems. The visit also saw Germany and Ukraine agree on a defense partnership deal and sign a memorandum of understanding to support Ukraine's reconstruction and help restore industries hit by the war with Russia. Germany's defense minister Boris Pistorius also announced that Berlin will invest 300 million euros in Ukraine's long-range capabilities. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing a political backlash over plans to align Britain more closely with the EU rules. The government says the move could boost trade and cut costs. However, critics warn it risks weakening Parliament's role.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is preparing controversial new legislation that could allow the UK to adopt future EU laws without a full parliamentary vote each time. The proposal is designed to make it easier for Britain to align with European rules in key areas like food standards, carbon pricing and electricity trading as a part of a broader effort to reset relations with Brussels after Brexit. Under the plans, ministers would be able to introduce changes through so-called secondary legislation, a fast-track process that limits debate and scrutiny in Parliament. The government insists MPs and peers will still have a role in overseeing these decisions, but critics argue their influence would be significantly reduced. The move has triggered a strong opposition from both the Conservatives and Reform UK, who say it risks handing too much power to ministers and undermining parliamentary sovereignty. Supporters, however, argue closer alignment with the EU could cut trade barriers, lower costs and boost economic stability at a time of global uncertainty. Speaking in Parliament, the Prime Minister said the economic and security benefits of stronger ties with Europe are too big to ignore, pointing to recent global shocks, including conflict in the Middle East and ongoing economic pressures. The legislation is expected later this year and would underpin future agreements with the EU. But the plan is politically sensitive. Unlike before Brexit, the UK would be aligning with rules it no longer has a direct role in shaping. The government argues this is a pragmatic step forward. Opponents say it looks like a step back. Either way, the debate over Britain's post-Brexit future is far from over. Zaina Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Pope Leo XIV is continuing his visit to Algeria, where he has been meeting religious leaders and promoting dialogue between faiths in the capital.
Pope Leo has continued his visit to Algeria with a stop at the Great Mosque of Algiers, where he was welcomed by Sheikh Mohammed Mamoun al-Kachimi al-Hochini. He toured the site, signed a commemorative message and received a souvenir shield as part of a broader trip focused on interfaith dialogue. He later visited the Basilica of Our Lady of Africa in the capital, where he met members of the clergy and addressed attendees, calling for unity and reconciliation.
In a world where divisions and wars sow pain and death between nations, in communities and even within families, your united and peaceful life is a powerful sign. United, you spread fraternity, inspiring in those around you desires and feelings of communion and reconciliation, with a message all the more powerful and clear for being borne witness to in simplicity and humility.
He also used his address to criticize what he described as violations of international law by neo-colonial powers, speaking in the wider context of his Africa tour. The Pope said his visit is a message of peace and hope, noting Africa's major role in global Catholicism, even as Algeria remains overwhelmingly Muslim with a small Catholic community. He also met members of the missionary Augustinian Sisters in Algiers, a Catholic religious congregation present in 17 countries. At 70 years old, Pope Leo is undertaking a multi-country African tour covering Algeria, Cameroon, Angola and Equatorial Guinea, spanning 11 cities and towns and nearly 18,000 kilometres of travel.
After the break, we'll look at the historic talks between Israel and Lebanon and discuss what both sides want, what's at stake, and whether these rare talks can ease tensions. Stay with us. Now, welcome back to A News. Israel and Lebanon are holding their first direct talks in decades in Washington, even as fighting with Hezbollah continues on the ground. To discuss these stakes and possible outcomes, we're joined by Nuno Martins, political analyst, joining us from Lisbon, Portugal. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Now, these are the first direct talks in decades between these two sides. How significant is this moment diplomatically?
Well, first and foremost, it's very important. It's a very important step forward, but it has multiple significations. Why? Because the historical moment of so many years without having talks between Israel and the Lebanese authorities on one hand. Second is because there is a fulfill by the Lebanese government to achieve an agreement with the Israeli authorities, which can move on to passwords of mutual recognition. This is also very important. And thirdly, there is a will to completely outlaw Hezbollah and to make Hezbollah either a political party to coup or to make it completely not involved in Lebanese politics.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking about Hezbollah, how realistic is that demand in the short term?
It's very hard to answer that question because we don't know exactly the military power that Hezbollah has. What we know is that the Iranian support is fading away, especially after the war last year, the 12-day war, first, and secondly, since the beginning of the war between Israel, the US, and Iran at the end of February this year. So it's very hard to say how Hezbollah can be, what is the military power of Hezbollah, what Hezbollah can dominate. We know that Hezbollah is still attacking Israel on one side. On the other side, Hezbollah, and this is why, in my view, Israel is attacking Beirut, because Hezbollah is trying to get as many places in Beirut to control the government and to control military the region around Beirut in order to put pressure on the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army forces. So it's very hard to say, but I do believe that it's completely shading away. And if the pressure continues and if the Lebanese government is strong enough to move on without suffering the pressure from Hezbollah, it will be very soon that Hezbollah will not be willing to put pressure as they have done in the past.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about pressure, Hezbollah opposes these talks. How much influence does that now have on Lebanon's position going into these talks?
So that's exactly the continuation of the previous question, which I do believe that Hezbollah has dominated the Lebanese politics in the past 30 years, and it has done it through Iranian support. And since the fall of the Syrian Assad regime, and since the weakness of the Iranian regime, this has been also a blow to Hezbollah in terms of, let's say, strength. Also, we have to count with the elimination of the Hezbollah leadership by the Israeli army. It also has been creating a lack of real leadership in the movement. As you know, the movement is divided by a political one and by an army one, which in my view, it's nothing else than both are the same, but it's divided for international matters. But it shows that Hezbollah at this stage, the fact that the Lebanese government agreed to go to a meeting with the Israeli authorities in the US, and by the way, with a political appointee being nominated as a Lebanese representative, it shows that, as I said before, that the Hezbollah influence, in my view, is completely fading away.
Mm-hmm. Now, what role is the United States playing in these talks, and can it act as an effective mediator, obviously, with everything that's happening in the Middle East?
Oh, look, absolutely. Why? First and foremost, it shows that the Lebanese trust the United States to broker the deal, on one hand. Then it shows that there is a strength that the Lebanese government is trying to be at least close to the Gulf countries, because I'm pretty sure that the Gulf countries had a say on this. And thirdly, it also shows that the Americans can be a broker because they can also put pressure on the Israeli side, and they can put pressure on the Israeli side in order to support the Lebanese army forces on one hand and the Lebanese government on the other hand, in order to tackle definitely Hezbollah as a real political actor in the region and in the country. On the other hand, this also shows another thing which is very important, which is the weakness of the French, who has been the traditional Lebanese partner in an international field and supporting Lebanon, and they were blocked to attend these negotiations, which also shows that either the Lebanese government don't care if the French are participating or not, or see the French being supporting the Hezbollah as a political army, which, by the way, the French authorities have done in the past in the European Union meetings when discussing the potentially to put Hezbollah as a terrorist organization.
Mm-hmm. Now, Nuno, in your view, what should the Lebanese delegation be aiming for? An immediate de-escalation or a longer-term political settlement?
I think it's a very important question, because I think the most important is the long-term political agreement with the neighborhood, with a neighbor country which, in my view, wants to have peace with Lebanon, despite the historical facts demonstrating several invasions by the Israeli Defense Army and since the 1970s, but because of the Palestinian reality in the country. But I do believe, because of this specific American administration, that if the Lebanese have to count on that, and they have to negotiate with the Israelis in order to have the Israelis not attacking and to de-escalate the tension in the country, how to demilitarize and how to help the Israeli authorities in demilitarizing Hezbollah. It's not going to be an easy task. It's not going to be an easy task for the Lebanese army forces, for the LAF, because it's not easy to demilitarize and to know where Hezbollah stands with all its military power in the country. But I do believe that with the help of the US, this can be a reality on one hand. On the other hand, the Israelis have to promise two things. They have to promise that the buffoon zone that they want to create in the south, once the challenge of Hezbollah and the terrorist attacks from Hezbollah are over, they go back to the Lebanese authority and to the Lebanese government, because it's part of Lebanon, on one hand. And on the other hand, they also can be pushing pressure on some of the Hezbollah forces in the south in order to convey not only to take off the military power of Hezbollah, but also the financial assistance and the financial strengths that Hezbollah has, and which are basically part of something that can be of the interest of the United States of America as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, what can the disarmament of Hezbollah look like in practical terms, if agreed? And what shall we expect from their Iranian allies as well?
Well, from the Iranian allies, I don't think can be expected too much. I think that most probably, if there will be some help, it will be through other countries, such as Russia probably, or even China, but I don't see how they can do that. But this is something else. What I do see is the only salvation, let's put it like this, for Hezbollah is to accept to become a political party. I doubt that this will be accepted by both the Lebanese government and the Israeli authorities, but that could be one of the solutions. Otherwise, they will have to create a different Shiite organization in the south of Lebanon, and they will have to see how the current framework of the Lebanese government will be sustainable in the future or not.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's been reports about a debate in Lebanon about what the government is going to discuss there with Israel. The residents have been debating whether or not, they have their approval to do that. Do you think that the Lebanese people are right or justified in this debate that they're having about the significance of these talks and whether or not it will be in their favor in the long run?
Look, I do believe that it's a little bit unimaginable to think that, as we could see on the screen previously, someone saying that they should make a referendum about these talks. You cannot make a referendum about some talks while being on war. It's a little bit complicated to organize a referendum at the same time. But I do believe that this is type of speech, of narrative. It's something that I have been pointing out on different fields, which is the importance of narratives in order to sustain certain groups or certain regimes. And this is, in my view, exactly the opposite. I understand that the Lebanese people might see Israel as a threat, as I said before, because of the invasion, the historical invasions and the historical conflict with the Lebanese. But I do believe that this is also a problem with Hezbollah, not with the Lebanese people, not with the Lebanese government. And I think that the moment that the Lebanese government makes a stand and makes a point that they want to outscale completely Hezbollah, and I do believe that this is the moment, because all the sustainability of Hezbollah as both a political and a military power is completely weakened by the situation in Iran, then it's the moment that the Lebanese government has to go for negotiations. They have to put on the table what they want. They have to know what the Israeli want, and they have to find, both of them, how to achieve these both ideas and both wills together and not separately, and most probably, as I said before, also with the support of the United States of America.
Mm-hmm. Now, finally, Nuno, if talks fail, what are the risks of further escalation in the coming weeks?
So that's a very important question, because there is a sub-question on that question, which is, what does it mean, failure? What do we, moving from here, just arranging a conversation, it's already a victory. It's already a milestone. I don't think that there will be failure per se. What will be, there will be a tentative by Hezbollah to undermine these negotiations, and they need to have a very strong will to fulfill the negotiations. This is a first step. I don't believe that they are going to start and to negotiate everything on this first meeting. This is a first step. I do believe they have to build a roadmap, and this is a roadmap that will take some years to be implemented. And in this roadmap, as the first step is very important, and not necessarily there will be a failure on this first step. There might be a failure on the implementation of the roadmap, but not right now as a first step. And I do believe also that one of the things that Israel is going to ask the Lebanese government is to understand that the Hezbollah's attacks will be seen as attacks, with a reply, with counterattacks by the Israeli government against Hezbollah forces. So I don't see, to be honest with you, that there will be a failure. I will see that this is the first step of an implementation of a long process, and this long process will have different phases. And it's those phases that will be implementing. Then we can have failure of the implementation of certain phases. But at this moment, for me, it's very hard to see that how this can become a failure, because this is just the beginning of a long process.
Thank you very much, Nuno, for sharing your time and insights with us.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
After the break, we'll take a look at key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. As the conflict in the Middle East forces a search for new routes and reliable partners, a shifting energy map is beginning to realign global priorities and alliances. At the center of that shift is Azerbaijan, with a role that is quickly expanding beyond its region.
Azerbaijan is emerging as a key player in global energy security as instability in Middle East disrupts traditional supply routes. According to the article published in the National Interest, tensions around the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy choke points, have raised concerns over the reliability of Gulf exports, prompting markets to look for alternative sources. In this context, the Caspian region is gaining importance, with Azerbaijan serving as a stable supplier of oil and gas to Europe through established routes such as the Southern Gas Corridor and the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. At the same time, Azerbaijan's role extends beyond supply. Its position along the Middle Corridor linking Central Asia to Europe makes it a critical transit hub for both energy and trade, particularly as global supply chains adjust to geopolitical tensions. Baku has also facilitated humanitarian shipments into northern Iran via land routes, highlighting its growing logistical relevance at a time when maritime access remains under pressure. This combination of energy production, transit connectivity, and geographic positioning places Azerbaijan at the center of shifting regional dynamics. As a result, its role is becoming increasingly important not only for European energy diversification, but also for the broader stability of supply routes linking Asia and Europe.
Ongoing tensions in the Middle East are pushing countries in the region to explore more secure alternative trade routes. Against this backdrop, Kazakhstan is stepping up its diplomatic efforts, with Foreign Minister Yemak Kosherbayev holding talks with Armenia and Azerbaijan on strengthening Eurasian transport links.
Kazakhstan is stepping up its diplomacy along the Middle Corridor, with Foreign Minister Yemak Kosherbayev visiting key partners in the South Caucasus. His recent stops in Baku and Yerevan highlight a coordinated effort to strengthen the westward trade route linking Central Asia to Europe. In Baku, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev hosted Kosherbayev together with Kazakhstan's Transport Minister Nurlan Sauranbayev. Talks went beyond transit. Officials discussed joint investment, green energy, and fiber optic projects across the Caspian Sea. According to Dr. Robert Cutler, Azerbaijan remains a critical partner in transport and communications. Without it, the western section of the corridor cannot function. Kazakhstan, in turn, is working to shape how the route operates, from infrastructure to scheduling and tariffs. According to a 2023 World Bank study, the Middle Corridor could boost trade between participating countries and the EU by 28% by 2030, if coordination and infrastructure improve. Meanwhile, regional dynamics are expanding. Armenia is interested to be part of this regional project and adds Trump Route for international peace and prosperity, known as the TRIP Corridor, as part of its economic strategy. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has signaled interest in attracting international investors, including Kazakhstan. The planned route would connect Azerbaijan to its Nakhchivan exclave through southern Armenia, adding another layer to regional connectivity. Thus, Kosherbayev's regional tour shows that Kazakhstan is not waiting for broader geopolitical shifts. Instead, it is actively building partnerships across the corridor. The Middle Corridor's future will depend not only on infrastructure, but also on sustained political cooperation among the countries it connects.
Kazakhstan is reporting a sharp decline in oil production as the country's energy sector comes under pressure from reduced output and disruptions in key export routes. Officials say the situation is already affecting overall economic dynamics and export performance. Farza Kalimoziner has more.
Oil production in Kazakhstan has fallen sharply, according to First Vice Minister of National Economy Azamat Amrin speaking at a government meeting. He said the country's real GDP growth reached 3% in the first quarter, but the contribution of the oil sector to the economy has halved. Amrin added that the economic growth this year will be maintained without a positive contribution from the oil industry. Energy Minister Yerlan Akkenjenov said the decline in the oil and gas sector is linked to developments involving the Caspian Pipeline Consortium and the Tengiz oil field. He noted that oil exports totaled 15.3 million tons in the first 3 months of the year, or 78.5% compared to the same period in 2025, while the full-year export forecast remains at 76 million tons. The Caspian Pipeline Consortium system continues to act as a key bottleneck, handling around 80% of Kazakhstan's oil exports. The route, which connects western oil fields to the Black Sea, has been under strain since autumn 2025 amid reported damage to energy infrastructure in the context of the war in Ukraine. According to experts, Kazakhstan may have lost more than $2 billion in revenue since autumn of last year due to disruptions in supply and constraints in oil transport infrastructure. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
A shipment of Azerbaijani diesel, fuel and Russian fertilizer has been dispatched to Armenia today. A train operated by Azerbaijan Railways carrying 22 wagons of diesel fuel totaling 1,298 tons, along with 4 wagons of 240 tons of fertilizer, departed from Bilajari station on Tuesday morning. The cargo is en route to Boyuk-Kasik and will reach Armenia via transit through Georgia. At least 16 people have been wounded in Turkey's southern province after a teenager opened fire at a high school on Tuesday. Officials say the attacker was a former student with no prior criminal record and took his own life as police attempted to apprehend him. Authorities say some of the injured have been transferred to facilities in the region for further treatment. Afghanistan and Uzbekistan are moving to deepen economic ties with fresh talks focused on agriculture, trade, transit and investment. Officials from both sides say the discussions could open the way for stronger exports, new joint projects and closer regional cooperation. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details.
In the latest sign of growing engagement between Kabul and Tashkent, Afghanistan's Minister of Agriculture, Irrigation and Livestock has held talks with Uzbek officials and traders on expanding bilateral cooperation in agricultural and trade sectors. According to the Ministry of Agriculture, the meeting focused on a number of key issues, including the export of Afghan meat to Uzbekistan, the supply of agricultural machinery, and steps to make transit processes easier between the two countries. In a statement, the Ministry of Agriculture said Uzbek officials welcomed the start of Afghan meat exports and underscored importance of increasing investment and broadening cooperation in the future. Meanwhile, Afghanistan's Minister of Industry and Commerce, Nuruddin Azizi, also met with Governor of Andijan, Sharat Beg Abdurrahmanov, to discuss ways to strengthen economic and trade relations, attract investment and raise the overall volume of trade between the two countries. Those talks included possible investment in fertilized and table egg production, cement manufacturing inside Afghanistan, cotton processing, leather shoe production in Uzbekistan, and the facilitation of vehicle transit under an agreement allowing at least 1,000 trucks per day. The Andijan governor also proposed setting up a library in Bagh-e-Babur and launching direct flights between Andijan and Kabul in a move aimed at boosting tourism, cultural exchange, and a broader joint cooperation. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
A major shift in South Caucasus trade routes is beginning to take shape, one that could redefine how goods move across the region and how influence is distributed. As Armenia moves to reopen rail connections and diversify transit options, attention is turning to Georgia, not only as a long-standing logistics hub, but as a country now facing a more competitive regional environment.
Georgia's role as a key transit corridor in the South Caucasus has been indirectly highlighted by Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, who referenced ongoing railway exports through Georgian territory while outlining new transport developments. Although mentioned briefly, Georgia remains central to the region's current logistics systems. For years, Georgia has effectively served as the primary transit route for Armenia, particularly due to close borders with Azerbaijan and Turkey. That dynamic is now beginning to change. According to Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, railway cargo transportation via Azerbaijan has become possible. This signals the gradual lifting of long-standing transport constraints and introduces an alternative route that could reshape regional trade flows. A key component of this shift is the planned TRIP project, which is expected to expand connectivity between Armenia and external markets further. If implemented, it could create additional transit options, reducing dependency on a single corridor and increasing route flexibility. These developments are closely tied to the broader peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The reopening of transport links is not only a political breakthrough, but also a structural economic shift, enabling the reconfiguration of logistics across the South Caucasus. For Georgia, this transition presents a more complex reality. The emergence of alternative routes introduces direct competition, potentially affecting transit volumes that previously flowed almost exclusively through Georgian territory. At the same time, existing challenges such as infrastructure bottlenecks, long implementation timelines for major projects, and capacity limitations may become more visible in a competitive environment. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Now, after the break, we'll examine shifting rail routes in the South Caucasus, Georgia's position, and what it means for regional trade. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. A new freight train carrying fuel and fertilizer has departed from Bilajari in Azerbaijan toward Armenia, highlighting evolving transport links in the South Caucasus. To assess Georgia's role as a transit hub, we're joined by Vakhtang Masay, political analyst from Tbilisi, Georgia. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, what is this new...
Good greeting you.
Thank you. Now, what does this new Azerbaijan-Armenia movement or rail movement signal for regional connectivity?
I think so. That's the new trend in order just to boost up and, of course, increase South Caucasus as a real transit geoeconomic just about hub at regional and international level. It's also a more important step to also just increase and get engaged Georgia into these new just about incentive promotions and attractions. I think that the last visit of Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev was successful visit to Georgia. It's also just give a good indication that Georgia could also join the so-called Trump Transit Corridor project. And of course, just opening the transit routes via Armenia even just doesn't about hampers any problems to Georgia as a just about having considered as a local transit hub corridor possibilities. Why? Because Georgia has accessibilities to the Black Sea, just about littoral areas. And of course, the Black Sea also considering the much more vital, important transit routes, also just getting connected with realization of the One Belt, One Road and other just about geoeconomic projects, even including about the United States project, which we should just label as like a west-south transit corridor. Just about this also could be a good implication that project Chinese and Americans just meet in this area, which we call South Caucasus. Moreover, about most attentive attentions to the Anaklia seaport project realization, which also been considered by the United States State Department, also just increase these possibilities. And of course, about new news also just been flattered when that's about Black Sea underway cable project was also adopted by the European Union just about leadership. And of course, it's also just should be considered as a new momentum, new just about, I think so, geopolitical fortune to increase just about trilateral, I mean about Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, just about engagements in just about promoting just our region as a new, very important transit hub, which also combines three elements, just about air, land, and sea.
Now, how significant is Georgia's role in the peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia and in this economic exchange?
Well, first of all, Georgia was about the first just about neighbor nations who also proposed each just about mediation and facilitation efforts when the war was under the way between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Of course, just it was like in Tbilisi also where held very interesting just about peace, enforcement, just meetings between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and Georgia was like mediating with these processes. Second, just about Georgia is considering, or even Armenia and Azerbaijan, the one of the key provider of the supply chain, which was absolutely been delivered from the Black Sea area to the just about Caspian Sea basin directions. And of course, in that way, for Georgia, for Armenia and Azerbaijan, also considering the most important geo-economic strategic partner. Moreover, Azerbaijan also just traced its also energy resources to the international market via Georgia-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, Georgia-Tbilisi-Erzurum pipeline system. Also, we also have under the way just railway, just project realization. It means about Baku-Tbilisi Kars railway system, where also Armenia could also just about join, also just being open to engage and to increase its geo-economic potential at just about a large scale. And of course, Georgia, I think so, just could also just and very maybe just about in the nearest future would also join this project, which I mean about Trump transit corridor, which also should be considering as a part of the combining the Baku-Tbilisi Kars railway system with realization of the Trump corridor, because they also been combined, they also been, I would say, just concentrated and completed its ways to the Turkish territories. That way, I would like to mention that in that case, Georgia has like a much more biggest fortune, much more biggest economic development provisions. And I guess, I think so about that a new just incentive like a Caucasus Geostrata should be considered as a proper way, which also implicated that the South Caucasus is like a homogeneous area, homogeneous not only from political, but first of all from economic, social, project realization, and of course, mainly from geo-economic for consideration at global level.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to ask you, what are the political risks tied to reopening and expanding these routes, as you've just mentioned?
Well, the risk could be also faced many of just about problems, including about just Persian Gulf, just about war over the Iran, could be a more destabilized case if just the war also been protected and also been increased in its volume and scope at first. Second, we also consider about so-called asymmetric just about threats, mostly about the case of the terrorism, about illegal migration, about just criminal organization network system. Because why? Because when we're talking about just realization of the geo-economic transit, trans-regional just integration, we also consider that of course similar way, some maybe just about shadow or the black just integration could be considered as proper. So this also could be as a detrimental factor of this case. Second, third, we also mentioned about occupied territories of Georgia, which also been occupied by Russian Federation. And of course, contemporary Russian just about political leadership could also not be happy in realizing those projects which I mentioned before ahead. So I guess these are those about maybe risks or just maybe challenges could be face of realization of this project at hand. But I guess these risk and challenges could be overcome with about joint effort by all three nations. I mean about Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan.
Mm-hmm. Well, sir, thank you very much for sharing your time and insights with us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.